couple of weeks ago, the brutal killing of George Floyd by a white policeman, caught on camera, shocked the world and triggered a wave of protest in cities around the globe, calling for an end to racism and prejudice. It's a cry for justice and an end to discrimination and violence. Towards the end of the Old Testament, sandwiched between the books of Nahum and Zephaniah, is a little book of Habakkuk. There's only 2 pages, 3 chapters long. You could easily miss it if you weren't looking for it. But it could have been written for a time such as this. And this reflection that I'm offering here is the first of 4 taken from this little book. Habakkuk was a contemporary of Jeremiah who lived just before and during the great catastrophe of the invasion and destruction by the mighty Babylonian army and the enforced exile as captives of the people of Judah, to be slaves taken from their promised land to a land far away in exile in Babylon. And you could say that we live in times of catastrophe. The global pandemic of COVID-19 has shaken the whole world, tested the country's health services, created global lockdown, and likely to lead to an economic recession that's going to impact the whole world. Who has ever known a time such as this? And then there's an outpouring of anger and grief following George Floyd's death that echoes centuries of pent-up frustration at the inequality of discrimination and racial prejudice experienced by so many. The language of complaint and protest is reflected in Habakkuk's frustration with God. Listen to these words as I read them from the first chapter of his writings, verses 2 to 4. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen, or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted. These words could have been written today. They express an anguish of soul, a cry of the heart that begins with those words, how long? And then followed by why? I'm sure we can all relate to this language of protest. Verse 13 says, why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? We've all asked the why question of God. Why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? Or the how long question. How long must I endure this situation? How long must I put up with this irritating person? How long is this lockdown going to continue? The voice of lament and protest is commonplace in the book of Psalms in the Bible. David cries out, how long, O Lord, in Psalm 13, how long, O Lord, how long will you hide yourself from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? There's a brutal honesty relating to the frustration of our human experience reflected in the pages of the Bible. We've all been there. That longing, the longing for marriage perhaps, or the longing to have a baby, or for the longing for healing, or the longing for justice, or the longing for freedom, or the longing for a change in our circumstances. At the end of Psalm 13, as David cries out, he says, look on me and answer, O Lord my God. He then concludes, but I trust in your unfailing love. That is your love that never fails. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. You know, friends, when we are in that place of why and how long, and rightly cry out in frustration and longing and protest at God's apparent silence, we have to make a decision. Are we going to listen to my heart, to my emotions, to my frustration? Or do I choose to move forward, trusting in God's ultimate faithfulness, goodness, and sovereignty. At the end of Habakkuk chapter 2, the Lord's reply to Habakkuk's complaint. In verse 20, he says, "But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him." Often there are no easy answers to the big questions of why and how long, and we have to resolve our frustrations by simply trusting in God's character. As Spurgeon put it so succinctly, when you cannot trace his hand, you can always trust his heart. Amen.